more cyclists, a lot more pedestrians out in the summer, people enjoying the fair weather and sometimes the slightly humid weather as we had yesterday. And of course, that means that we have to be a little bit more careful about drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. And there's some new legislation that we should all be aware of as well. Here to tell us a little bit more about it is David Hollingsworth, personal injury lawyer.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
So what changes are we seeing? Just because I think people are sort of used to doing things a certain way,
Right.
and they're not always aware of what's new.
Yeah, that's right. So back, I think it was last fall actually that the law was enacted, but it's really being implemented now, and it's the Making Ontario Roads Safer Act, which is fairly self-explanatory. It imposes stricter standards on drivers trying to promote safety on our roads. And so basically it covers a number of areas. Distracted driving, impaired driving, how to deal with emergency vehicles. But really what you're noticing, like you said, in this weather are the intersection between pedestrians, cyclists, and motor vehicles. So there are some new laws that relate to how these different modes of transport have to interact with one another.
We were talking about the new crosswalks.
Right.
They're
Crossovers.
They're now called,
crossovers versus crosswalks.
Yes.
So
Exactly, right.
What's the difference?
Well, so crosswalks, we all know what they are. At an intersection, you've got the white lines, and you either have the pedestrian, the white pedestrian that shows you can walk, or the orange hand that says you can't.
Right.
And what would happen is before, when a pedestrian would make their way across your lane, if you're a motor vehicle, once they're across your lane, you could then make your maneuver. That's what happens at a crosswalk. Now, the city is popping up crossovers all over the place, which is not at an intersection. This is where you've just got a location where pedestrians can cross in the middle of the road. There are signs, there are lines.
And it is
So
their
it's-
right of way.
It is their, not only is it their right of way, but when, as a motor vehicle, as you approach this crossover, you have to stop, and not only do you wait till the pedestrians across your lane of traffic, you have to wait till they're all the way to the other side of the road.
Really?
Yeah.
See, many of us who have taken our driver's tests way back when didn't have that in our tests, right? So we're kind of
Yeah.
new to this whole.
So this is what they
crossover.
call a zebra crossing.
I guess they would call it that.
Yeah.
And it's so actually they used to have these way back when, maybe
Okay.
before Jasmine, you took driver's ed, but they would have the yellow crosses on the top of the road, and then there were pedestrian crossovers.
Right.
We
Then
still see some of those around.
Yeah,
Maybe
they're-
not our city, but
not as many. What they
Yeah.
did was mostly replace those with traffic lights, and now they're going back to the crossover model. And I read on the City of Ottawa website that they're looking at implementing 60 new ones per year for the
Wow.
next 3 years. So like 180 of these things are going to be popping up. And important to note as well that cyclists are also subject to having to stop and
Right.
wait for the person to get all the way across. And another rule about these crossovers is that you are not allowed to, one vehicle is not allowed to overtake another vehicle within 30 meters. So
Okay.
you have to be 100, if you're less than 100 feet back, you can't pass another vehicle as you're approaching a crossover. So it's really going to, given the number of them, I think there are already about 50 of them in town here, given the number of them, it's going to have a significant impact.
Now, that puts me in mind of, I was downtown for Glow Fair, and I was crossing the green bike lane
Okay?
on Laurier.
Yeah.
And I sort of stepped out
Yeah.
because I was like, okay, so I can stand here, but then a bicyclist came by and I was like stood back. So what's the rule there?
Well, I mean, it's a bicycle lane. You would treat it like you would treat any kind of traffic lane.
Okay.
It's just that the cyclists have that designated area. Did you say Laurier?
Yeah.
Yeah, Laurier is definitely one where they've got that designated. They even have a barrier in
Yeah.
between that and the motor vehicle road. But it's it's a cyclist right of way unless the cyclist has a light, and then the typical pedestrian rules
it's
come into
funny
play.
because I was on Laurier this morning, and obviously there's bike lanes on either side.
Right.
And there was a pedestrian crossing the road through the bike lane.
Right.
And a biker said, "Hey, this is our lane."
Right.
Right.
So can we as pedestrians get fined for being in that lane? Just
Well,
crossing?
it would be the equivalent of jaywalking.
Okay.
It would be the equivalent of jaywalking.
Crazy times.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the other one is the 1 meter rule. We were
Yeah,
talking about that
we
with
were.
Julie Findlay last week.
Okay.
1 meter rule. Now you were saying that it's, or as near as applicable, because cyclists
Right.
can weave.
Yeah, right, exactly. So what the rule says is that if you go to, as a motorist, if you go to overtake a cyclist, you have to give a berth of 1 meter until you're safely past the cyclist. But if you read the legislation, it does say, or as nearly as practicable. So, you know, that gives lawyers something to argue about.
Yeah, beside you.
It just, you know, really what they're doing is there's a little bit of wiggle room with that qualifier, and I guess they're trying to codify common sense. And you know, people aren't driving with a you know, a meter stick to
because that would take
out.
the cyclists out. I actually thought that one through. I was like, this could work. No.
But you know what the police were doing just to sort of test it out? Apparently on Somerset, and I actually think I saw them, they had on their handlebars, they had some sort of radar with a sonar detector.
That's right.
And so they had vehicles passing them, and if their sonar went off, then they radioed ahead and the people got pulled over. And I think right now they're primarily educating people. I don't know of any fines that have been imposed.
David, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks
Such
for
valuable information.
Yeah, and so people can find you at
online.
Yes,
website?
right. David at ottawainjury.ca.
Great. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you for that
Thanks for being
insight.
here.